Hello everybody, my name is Megan Davis, and today I will be presenting my research findings on violations of security and safety under the U.S. Patriot Act. The USA Patriot Act is also known as simply the Patriot Act. It was a bill signed into law on October 26, 2001 by President George W. Bush. It is an acronymic standing for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. It was enacted by the U.S. Congress as a direct result of two previous terrorist attacks and in defense of national security. I'm going to argue that this law has provided, along with the powers that it granted to other agencies, a federal sanctioning of violence and a threat to national safety and privacy via wiretaps, home invasion, and unconstitutional searches, detention of suspected risks. So, in 2001, the FBI released information about a terrorist attack that occurred in New Jersey, where they found in a mail center several powder-filled envelopes. Several deaths and infections not only occurred in the persons addressed by these envelopes, but in the mail-carrying facility and in persons along the envelope route. The spores of Bacillus anthracis are often consumed by vegetation-eating animals who then pass it on to human handlers, either through inhalation, ingestion, or cutaneously. Bacillus anthracis is also known as anthrax. The threat of this bacterium is low for the average citizen, but because it can be processed into aerosols and powders and it can become a bioweapon. So from this attack, 22 cases were identified and 5 deaths occurred. But before this terrorist attack, 1 month before, approximately 3,000 people died in the US's worst terrorist attack on September 11, 2001. Of these 3,000 deaths were 19 hijackers that overtook 4 planes with intentions to fly them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the Capitol building, of which all were hit with the exception of the Capitol building. Within weeks of the disaster, the names of all 19 hijackers were tracked down by customs officials and the FBI, and they were named. So exposing these hijackers as members of the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda, the FBI and the National Security Agency, the NSA, also along with the president, declared war on terror. So a couple weeks later, in October 2001, the Office of Homeland Security was created in response to these attacks. In 2003, the Department of Homeland Security was instituted. This department absorbed 22 other agencies, of which you would probably know the Coast Guard, FEMA, TSA, ICE, and other customs and immigration agencies. So this department is responsible for domestic security issues such as pandemics, biowarfare, failure of infrastructure, transportation disasters, as well as cybersecurity. So over the department's evolution, its goals have turned from discipline for individual threat actors to risk management for total populations. But despite this, the DHS has been using surveillance to spy on groups of people that they have deemed risky, using mathematical modeling to mine personal identifying and financial information. So, under the Patriot Act, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, has received far-reaching abilities to spy on personally financial information. In 2004, the director of FinCEN actually had to argue in front of the House of Representatives that collecting financial intelligence can assist in predicting terrorist attacks by tracing their networks and preventing attacks before they occur. They do this through a British data mining company called Metis, which uses software to study the trends of financial institutions. They collect big data on people like you and me, teachers, taxi drivers, grocery store clerks, anyone who banks with an institution that's contracted to Mantis. They study the deposits and withdrawals and are able to predict what kind of money can go in and out of what kind of person's account. With these predictions, Mantis is able to track irregularities, but the most susceptible people to being flagged are migrants, students, unemployed, and people with just irregular deposit withdrawal records. The Patriot Act specifically requests record keeping of these irregularities with the names of the people that are responsible for them. Those also susceptible to this are money remitters, or people who use wire transfers to send money to and from. Some of these money remitters are unlicensed, and under the Patriot Act, several have been imprisoned simply on the suspicion of supporting terrorist activity. Another agency that had been granted new liberties under the Patriot Act was the NSA. It was revealed in 2013 by whistleblower Edward Snowden that the agency had been violating public right to privacy under these new liberties. The NSA has a $10 billion budget and a task force of 35,000 employees and has been collecting a massive cache of personally identifiable information. The reveal of Edward Snowden spurred a conflict attended to by Congress and the American people, arguing if the government should be able to violate the public's privacy with the intention of detecting threats to national safety. The main question was, what exactly is the NSA doing with all of this information? The NSA claimed under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, the American people were protected from mass surveillance, and that any initiative they had to conduct wiretapping or surveillance had to go through the secret FISA courts. These FISA courts, however, are non-public and secret. They receive tens of thousands of warrants each year and only deny a few of them. So distrust grew as it became known how much data was being stored by the NSA, and that this data was being obtained without FISA court approval. An amendment to FISA in Section 207 even allows the NSA to access telephone cables running anywhere in the U.S. and communications directly from Internet services such as Google, Facebook, Yahoo, and Microsoft through a program codenamed PRISM. Widespread disapproval led the NSA to cease bulk data collection, but to this day they continue to use mechanisms to spy on individuals, international and domestic, via smartphones and Internet use. The Patriot Act, which supported the genesis of the Department of Homeland Security, also gave way to a subdivision under the DHS of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE. The two main objectives of this agency were to protect the U.S. from illegal transport and import of people and goods, and to prevent terrorism. ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Team, or ARROW, is meant to identify, arrest, and deport individuals of risk or individuals that violate immigration laws, and they are available to detect and identify these cases for arrest and deportation via facial recognition software. The NSA stores all of these PII information in Amazon Web Services server. In total, that server houses 230 million identities, including 36.5 million face records and 2.8 million irises of people they believe may be suspected of any criminal activity. And they obtain all of this information, these PII and biometrics, from a company called Palantir. The NSA has been contracted to Palantir since 2014 and has been using its software for data mining and surveillance purposes. Palantir collects names, addresses, social security numbers, where you go, using road cameras and license plate tracking, your email, your phone numbers, tattoos, and using Facebook and other social sites, your friends and family. ICE is able to house all of this surveillance information via Title 11 under the 9/11 Commission Implementation Act of 2007. Section 316 allows the federal government to implement a national biosurveillance integration center with the primary mission to track and identify persons related to the occurrences of possible terrorism. But this surveillance includes records of people or videos of people in social hubs like transportation centers, bus depots, airports, and schools. Another law that was written during the Patriot Act that has given the government extra powers to arrest is the authorization for use of military force, which was passed exactly 1 week from the plane crashes in 2001. The law grants the president the use of any necessary actions and forces against persons believed to be involved in terrorist activity. So, along with the Patriot Act and the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, Congress is allowed to wiretap telephones and the interception of computer data if terrorism or criminal activity is suspected to occur or suspected to be communicated about. Homeland Security is allowed to track and collect it. Both the Bush and Obama administrations had to grapple with the Electronic Frontier Foundation over the constitutionality of this in 2010. But what is most important about these acts is that the president and even local law enforcement have the power to monitor both international and domestic criminal suspects, as well as anybody else they even suspect to be guilty. So some background behind the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, is that it was created in 1978 in response to the Nixon administration's illegal wiretapping. So it required that all wiretapping from then on, or monitoring of communications, must be defended in a FISA court. Any wiretapping should be consented by FISA, the telecommunications providers, and the persons in question, at least after the fact. The Patriot Act allows any surveillance to completely bypass these courts. Much later, in 2008, it was an AT&T whistleblower that publicized AT&T, Verizon, Bell South, Sprint, and Singular were all complicit in roving warrantless wiretapping done by the NSA. In San Francisco, the NSA, and specifically AT&T, spliced fiber optic splitters into peering links that were able to connect its network with 16 other carriers and exchange points. These highways directed all traffic that passed through these links to the NSA's Big Brother machine, a Naris ST-6400, which was located in a secret room in San Francisco. This machine was capable of monitoring over 622 megabits per second of data and could analyze all packets containing information related to and from IP addresses that pass through these links. After dozens of lawsuits went against the NSA the same year, the FISA Amendments Act of 2008 renewed a 1978 Surveillance Act, which gave federal judges the right to waive the lawsuits if the telecommunication firms could prove that they had been authorized by the president and contributed to the safety of the U.S., which most of them could. To this day, the government still uses the excuse of protecting civil liberties to monitor and track our identities, our whereabouts, and our friends. In the wake of a devastating tragedy, the Bush administration had made it their goal to dominate popular media with a severe anti-terrorism and pro-nationalism rhetoric. The creation of the Patriot Act, which was written a lot after the September 11th attacks, created a landslide federal privacy abuse initiative impacting millions of Americans under the guise of national safety. With the liberties the Act gave to several law enforcement agencies with financial tracking, roving wiretaps, forced identification, the Department of Homeland Security, the National Security Agency, and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement all serve as a means to threaten the U.S. people's right to privacy, all which are fueled by the protections under the Patriot Act. All right, thanks for listening, everybody.